I am 99 years old today, yet when I look in the mirror, I do not see the frailty that society told me to expect from a centenarian. My blood work is immaculate. My biological age markers suggest a woman decades younger. And I am still lifting weights with an intensity that baffles my great-grandchildren. I am sprinting again, my mind is sharp, and I have achieved this state of vitality without relying on the endless pharmaceutical cocktails, hormone replacements, or synthetic peptides that became so popular at the turn of the century. As I sit here reflecting on a century of life, I realize that the trajectory of my longevity did not begin recently, but rather during a specific pivotal year when I completely overhauled my philosophy on existence. That year was 2026. It was the year I stopped fighting my body and started listening to it, learning 10 powerful lessons that saved me from the slow decline of aging and built the foundation for the vigor I enjoy today. The first and perhaps most counterintuitive lesson I learned in 2026 was that to get stronger, I actually needed to do less, not more. For years, I had labored under the delusion that volume equaled progress, spending hours in the gym trying to beat my body into submission. But that year, I adopted what I called the 2S method, a radical shift that required only 2 sets per exercise. It terrified me at first because it felt like cheating, yet the logic was irrefutable. I discovered that muscles do not grow simply because you spend an hour heaving weights. They grow when they are pushed close to their absolute limits with heavy, challenging resistance. By limiting myself to just 2 sets, I created a forcing function that demanded I lift with maximum intensity, taking every repetition to within 1 rep of failure. This approach stripped away the junk volume that was merely exhausting me without stimulating adaptation. I cut my gym time down to 30 or 40 minutes 3 times a week and found myself with more free time and significantly better results. I realized that I had been saving my energy for final sets that never mattered, whereas this method forced me to empty the tank immediately. It taught me that quality always trumps quantity, a principle that has kept my joints healthy and my muscles acting as a protective suit of armor for over 50 years. While my body was getting stronger through shorter workouts, I stumbled upon a second lesson that saved my senses, specifically my eyesight. Around 2025 and into 2026, I had noticed the terrifying creep of age-related vision loss, struggling to read menus in dim restaurants and squinting at the fine print on my devices. I was on the verge of accepting reading glasses as my inevitable fate when I discovered the regenerative power of red light therapy. I remember borrowing a pair of glasses from an older relative just to see a menu and feeling a deep sense of fear that my independence was slipping away, which drove me to research how light affects our biology. I learned that red light could recharge the mitochondria in my eye cells, essentially giving them the energy they needed to function like younger cells. I began a ritual of sitting in front of a red light device for 15 minutes every morning with my eyes closed, listening to audiobooks and just breathing. The results were nothing short of shocking. Within weeks, I could read the tiny letters on my e-reader without squinting. My color perception became more vivid, and the blurred edges of my world sharpened back into focus. But the benefits of this light therapy went beyond just my eyes. I noticed a curious side effect where my morning hunger and cravings were blunted. It turned out that getting my light environment aligned was affecting my hormones, specifically leptin and ghrelin, helping me regulate my appetite without willpower. It was a stark reminder that we are beings of light, and managing our light exposure is just as critical as managing our diet. This newfound connection to my biological rhythms led directly to the third lesson of 2026, which was the necessity of divorcing myself from my smartwatch. By the mid-2020s, we were all drowning in data, wearing rings and watches that constantly chirped at us, telling us how well we slept or how stressed we were. I remember a specific trip where my digital watch died while I was out in the water, and because I had no charger, I was forced to go without it for the remainder of the vacation. At first, I felt a phantom limb sensation, an anxiety that I couldn't quantify my heart rate or my steps, but that anxiety quickly gave way to a profound sense of freedom. I realized that these devices had become a crutch, disabling my ability to feel my own body. I had been outsourcing my intuition to an algorithm, letting a piece of plastic tell me I was tired even when I felt energized, or pushing myself to exercise when my body was screaming for rest simply to close a digital ring. Breaking up with my wearable forced me to relearn the language of my own physiology. I learned that the one true measure of fitness is how you feel, not what a screen dictates. I stopped exposing my skin to constant Bluetooth and Wi-Fi radiation and started trusting my internal signals again. It was a divorce that allowed me to reconnect with myself, ensuring that for the next 7 decades, I moved based on intuition and genuine energy, not data points. With my intuition reclaimed from the clutches of digital notifications, I realized I needed a strategy to direct this newfound energy. This brought me to the fourth lesson of 2026, a framework I came to know as the U2 Roadmap. Before this point, I had treated health like a chaotic game of whack-a-mole, randomly trying to lose fat, build muscle, and optimize sleep all at the same time, which inevitably led to burnout. That year, I learned that health is a hierarchy that must be climbed sequentially, not a buffet to be consumed all at once. I started with the metabolic foundation, ensuring my blood markers and blood sugar were stable before I even thought about high performance. Once that baseline was secure, I moved to the second level, which I viewed as building my armor. I focused on adding lean mass, understanding for the first time that muscle wasn't just for aesthetics, but served as a protective suit that improved my insulin sensitivity and joint health. Only after my armor was built did I focus on the mitochondrial engine, working on my cardiovascular fitness and VO2 max to deliver oxygen efficiently to my brain and body. The fourth level was perhaps the most neglected in my youth, waste removal. I obsessed over recovery, optimizing my sleep and circadian rhythms to allow my body to stop fighting itself and start running efficiently. Finally, I reached the level of high-performance mastery, where body, mind, and spirit integrated seamlessly. This roadmap taught me that progress happens fastest when you specialize in one level before moving up, rather than trying to do everything at once. It was a methodical approach that turned the overwhelming prospect of getting healthy into a logical step-by-step ascent. However, even the best roadmap is useless without a vehicle to traverse it, which led to the fifth lesson, the realization that I would always fall to the level of my systems. I used to rely on motivation, that fleeting burst of excitement that usually vanished by mid-February. But in 2026, I accepted that a goal without a system is merely a dream. I began to treat my body as the system it is, one that thrives on rhythm and routine. I trained at the same time every day to signal performance, and I slept at the same time to signal recovery. By eating in a consistent rhythm, I found that my hunger began to regulate itself. I stopped grinding and started automating. The realization that systems compound while motivation fades changed everything. I wasn't fighting to be healthy anymore. I was simply flowing through a day designed to make health inevitable. While I was grounding myself in these biological rhythms, the world around me was exploding with artificial intelligence. And my sixth lesson involved harnessing this technology without losing my humanity. 2026 was the year I started using AI, not as a master, but as a co-pilot and a sparring partner for my health decisions. I used it to challenge my thinking, test my assumptions about diet, and spot blind spots in my routine that I had missed for years. Yet, I remained wary. I knew that AI could hallucinate, confidently presenting false information as fact, so I never outsourced my thinking entirely. Instead, I combined its computational power with my own self-awareness and legitimate human coaching. I even experimented with building a personal AI health coach, trained on my specific data and methodology, creating a feedback loop that felt like having a wise mentor in my pocket at all times. This lesson taught me that technology should amplify our agency, not replace it. The seventh lesson I learned that year was perhaps the most controversial, yet it was instrumental in preserving the youthfulness of my mind. It involved the careful, guided use of psychedelics to support longevity. I approached this with extreme caution, aware of the risks, but the results were undeniable. Under professional guidance, I used these compounds to release decades of emotional baggage that I had been carrying in my body as chronic stress. I took a page from the book of longevity pioneers like Brian Johnson, who utilized these tools to restore neuroplasticity and emotional well-being. It wasn't just about feeling high. It was about restoring a sense of curiosity and flexibility in my brain that usually calcifies with age. I learned that holding on to trauma ages you faster than any bad diet, and clearing that mental clutter was as essential as clearing the plaque from my arteries. Descending from the spiritual to the strictly practical, the eighth lesson of 2026 was a revelation in the kitchen, the air fryer. It sounds mundane compared to psychedelics and AI, but this simple tool removed the friction from healthy eating. Suddenly, cooking steaks, veggies, and potatoes wasn't a chore that required hours of preparation and cleanup. It became fast, delicious, and fun. I was careful, of course, to select a non-toxic model without harmful coatings, but once I did, consistency beat perfection every time. I realized that if I could make healthy food taste like a treat and take less time than ordering takeout, I would never struggle with my diet again. It taught me that we should not despise the simple tools. Sometimes a frictionless kitchen is the secret weapon of longevity. While diet and tools helped streamline my nutrition, the ninth lesson of 2026 required me to look up and address the very environment I lived in. Light exposure. I realized that light was perhaps the most underrated health lever available to me, yet I had been ignoring it for decades. I became serious about prioritizing natural sunlight and ruthlessly purging my home of harsh, modern, artificial lighting. I swapped out the jarring LED bulbs for old-fashioned incandescent ones to create a softer, more biological environment. And when the sun went down, I began dimming the lights to signal to my body that it was time to rest. I even went as far as to buy small black stickers to cover every single power indicator light in my bedroom, ensuring a completely blacked out environment to protect my sleep quality and, surprisingly, my insulin sensitivity. I learned that if I fixed the things I experienced every single day, water, food, and light, being healthy would become automatic, whereas staying indoors under artificial glare was silently wrecking my biology from the inside out. Finally, the 10th and most profound lesson of that transformative year was the concept of identity-based transformation. For years, I had obsessed over the logistics of health, tracking macros, counting calories, and logging workouts. But in 2026, I stopped focusing on the do and started focusing on the be. I realized that I had been trying to perform healthy actions in hopes of eventually becoming a healthy person, but the equation was backward. I needed to adopt the identity of a healthy person first and let the actions follow as natural evidence of that truth. I began asking myself a simple but powerful question before every decision. Who do I have to become to make this goal irrelevant? Instead of relying on fleeting willpower to resist a dessert or force a workout, I simply asked what the 2.0 version of myself would do in that situation, and then I acted accordingly. This shift from behavior modification to identity evolution meant I never fell off the wagon again, because the wagon was no longer something I was riding. It was simply who I was. Looking back from my vantage point of 99 years, I see that 2026 was not just a year of biohacks or fitness trends, but the year I finally understood that health is not about doing more, but about doing the right things at the right times. It was the year I learned that we rise to the level of our goals, but fall to the level of our systems. By mastering my metabolism, building my muscular armor, tuning my light environment, and ultimately shifting my identity, I built a vessel capable of carrying me through a century with grace. These 10 lessons didn't just add years to my life, they added life to my years, allowing me to stand here today, nearly a century old, with a mind as clear as the morning sun and a body that still serves me well